Welcome to the Thrive with Omu Podcast, where each week I'll chat with an amazing entrepreneur on their growth journey. They'll be sharing this with us to help and encourage us to take that bold step. Hey people, we're back again this Friday and I'm with Martin Salama. He's the architect of the Warriors Life Code. Nice to have you on my podcast, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Omu. A pleasure to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm really having a great day.
Awesome. So can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So I'm known as the architect of the Warriors Life Code, and life stands for live incredibly full every day.
Awesome. So living your best life.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that. How did that journey start?
Well, to tell you the truth, let's go back to the beginning. How's that? So that this way
I'd love that.
A little bit of a history as to where I was and how I became who I am today.
Yeah.
So when I was 10 years old, so this is almost 50 years ago. I just turned 60 a few days ago. You can see the balloons behind me. Yeah. So,
congratulations.
Thank you. So when I was 10 years old, I had 4 older sisters and a younger brother who was about 5 years younger than me. His name was Michael. And I had tragedy at a very young age. Michael was killed by a school bus.
Oh, wow.
And it was the most devastating thing, the most tragic thing that has ever happened in my life. You know, I've lost my father. He was 76 when he passed. But, you know, he was 76 and he had a full life. And of course, I wanted him around to be 100 and whatever. But losing my 5-year-old brother was much more tragic for me, as you could understand, as it was for my parents. You know, they were very distraught by it, as we all were. And at that moment, I look back now and I realize I told myself a story that because I'm the only boy left, I'm the one that has to carry on the legacy, keep the name going and all that. So I said, it's my job to make sure my parents are happy, because exactly at that moment, they were the saddest they would ever be in their entire life.
I can imagine losing a child can be easy.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I could look back and see some of the things my parents have done as a result of that. They left their legacy in my community, in the world, in many ways. For example, it took my mother a little while to get out of that funk, and understandably she was in. And she reached out and found out that there were other women who were suffering like her, who had lost children. So she put together a bereavement group and had, in the beginning, a counselor to help them. And for over 40 years, she was the leader of this bereavement group. And whenever someone would pass, a child would pass, she would go to the mother and say, I have something to tell you that nobody else can tell you. I know how you feel. Right? Because I lost a child too. And there are other women who you can come who will support you. So women have come over to me in my community over the years and said, your mother is an angel. She has helped me through my toughest time. So that was my mom. She was very strong. My father did many strong things as well. But that one specifically, in that, that ties into what happened with my brother Michael. You know, so I became a people pleaser. And over the years, looking back now, it took me almost 40 years to figure out what that meant, that I was a people pleaser, and that's what I was. And what it meant to me was I took things personally. I had a short temper, and I was a control freak. Everything that happened, I had to know what was going on and be on top of it the whole time. Wow. And, you know, and that continued for 40 years. When I got married, I was trying to make my parents happy. I was trying to make my wife happy. And I was rationalized all the time that what I was doing was for the greater good. Now I've taken the word rationalize, now that I understand really what I was doing. And I've trademarked it into 2 words, rational lies. That I lie to myself, lies. Rational to do things that I know goes against what I really believe inside, because I'm making somebody else happy, I'm feeding my ego or whatever. Mm-hmm. So
was there a bit of fear of rejection?
Absolutely, 100%. Fear of rejection was something I lived with for many, many years. as somebody who's a people pleaser, that's exactly what you're trying to do. And there was also a need for recognition, a need for people to say, wow, Martin, you did that. That's unbelievable. Right? Because if I'm being a people pleaser and I'm trying to make everybody happy, I should get the credit for it. That's my mindset. That's what I'm going for. You know? So that's the way I lived for 40 plus years. And I would be so much, I would have such a short temper that I would react to everything. Over and say I was a nuclear reactor. I would leave fallout all over the place.
I'm glad I didn't meet you then.
Yes. So is my current wife. So yeah. So now imagine this is who I was, and I lived this way, and this is who I thought I am, and that's okay. And then in 2008, my wife and I were working on a project for 5 years to build a multi-million-dollar health club in New Jersey. And this even started because my wife came to me one day. I just closed a business, and she said, well, you need something to do. You can't sit around the house all day, even though we have some income coming in that you don't have to do anything. And I'm having trouble finding places to play tennis. Let's look into opening tennis courts. I was like, okay, if that's what you want, let's do that. Because I was being my people pleaser self again. And we went on a 5-year journey. And I'm not blaming her. I could have said no any time in my marriage. It's just my weakness, fear of rejection, low self-esteem would push me to do things I shouldn't do.
Okay? And she might have accepted your no.
She might. No, it usually didn't happen that way because she knew eventually she'd get me to say yes. But that's not on her. That's still on me. Okay. So now it's 2008 and we finally get all of the approvals from the state, from the city, and we paid a lot of money into the architecture and engineer so that as soon as we get all the approvals, we go to the bank and we'll get started. We put in over $3 million. We go to the bank in the summer of 2008. They go, we're not lending right now. The world's about to fall apart. Like, what are you talking about? Well, you'll see. And in September 2008, the world fell apart. Bernie Madoff, subprime loans, all those things. Mm-hmm. And just like that, I was wiped out. I had no money left. So bad that my house was foreclosed on. Took them a few years till they finally took possession of it. But my house was foreclosed on because I stopped paying the bills. My cars were repossessed where they drove them away. My kids watched them pick the tow truck come and take them away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was in a pretty bad place. And it took me about a year to pick myself off the floor and get out of my own self-imposed depression because of what was going on.
I'd like to know how you picked yourself up.
So that's an interesting story. So here I am. I'm depressed about what went on. And my family, my sisters, my mother, see me depressed. And they go, you need to get help. You need to see a psychologist. You need to see a psychiatrist. You maybe need to go on some depression medicine. I'm like, okay, I'll listen to what you say. So I go and I start taking this medication called Wellbutrin, which was great. It really helped me out. But here's how bad things were. I had no money that I stopped paying my health insurance. And my health insurance lapsed. And because my health insurance lapsed, I couldn't afford the medication. So now I'm looking at myself, I go, what the heck am I going to do? And I had some therapists at the time. I was able to get a therapist through a community organization. And he said, well, how much of it is really going on about what's going on in your life? And I was like, well, I guess it's a lot of it. So I did some research and I realized I had what was known as situational depression.
Yeah.
It wasn't physiological. It was because of the situation that I found myself in. So I said to myself, okay, now that I understand what this is all about, what am I going to do about it? And I realized I didn't need the medication. And that started my journey. And then after about a year, this all happened over a year, I said, now what am I going to do with my life? I don't want to be in business anymore. I'm tired of being the ups and downs of businesses. And I realized over the years, I was always successful and happy when I was working in community events because my parents were community-minded people. They brought it into our family, and my sisters and I are community-minded people. I started a synagogue in New Jersey. I was the founder of it for 10, 15 years. I was a leader. And what I realized was as a leader, people would come in and say, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I would coach them to understand that they have the power within. I was like, wait a minute, I'm a coach. Now let me go out and become one for real. All right. So now this is what's happening. And about 2 months before coaching was going to start the school, it's my 24th wedding anniversary. And my wife says, I'm done. I want a divorce.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, wow. She says, I can't take this up and down anymore. Well, finances and all that. And, you know, your temper, whatever. I was really, as much as I should have known it was coming, until it actually happens, you don't believe it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe I should have turned to her and said, it's our anniversary. I didn't get you anything like that for a gift like that. But looking back now, other than our 4 children, it was probably the best gift she ever gave me. Because it was the kick in the pants I needed when I was down that said, God was telling me, listen, Martin, you want to go for coaching? You got to figure your stuff out. You got to figure yourself out. And I went into that first weekend of coaching training saying, okay, I'm open to what they're going to tell me here. And they said, you don't have to live with the way you're being. It's up to you to change. And one of the books that they recommended for us to read was The 4 Agreements. Did you ever read that book?
No, I haven't heard of it.
So it's a fantastic book.
What
So
did you call it?
His name is Don Miguel Ruiz, The 4 Agreements. And in it, it comes down to 4 things you should change in your life.
Yeah.
One is be impeccable with your words.
Being what?
Be impeccable with your words.
With your words, yeah.
Next, don't take anything personally.
Mm-hmm.
Next, don't make assumptions. And last is always do your best. So I read it and I realized the second agreement, don't take anything personally, it was as if somebody had just given me the secret that everybody had been telling me my entire life, but until that moment, I couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, you mean I don't have to have the world on my shoulders? You mean I don't have to listen when somebody says you're an idiot?
Mm-hmm.
It's up to me to decide whether they're the idiot just calling me an idiot or whatever. And it was the beginning of my journey to transform myself from Martin 1.0 to 2.0. Between that book and the coaching training that I went through, I came out a better person. And I understood the things that were holding me back.
Awesome. I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So now I finish coaching and I become a divorce recovery coach. Makes sense? I just came through a divorce.
And that's a specialized niche. And who best to coach you on recovery from divorce than someone who's been through it himself?
Right. And I recognized that how the coaching school and the coaching I got as a result of it had gotten me through a very tough time in my life. So I was like, okay, I gotta share this with others. And I did this for a few years. And one day I looked in the mirror and I was the heaviest I ever was in my life. And I said, how did I get here? And I realized I got there because I wasn't being coached. I wasn't doing what I should be doing for myself. I was coaching others, but I wasn't taking care of myself. I was like, okay, we got to do something about this. And that moment I made a decision that even though at the time had another job, I was working a dead-end job from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day. I'd leave my house at 7 and get home after 7. I was like, how am I going to exercise? I can't even afford to go to the gym, let alone find the time. And I was on Facebook and a friend of mine said, I just started this program, a 30-minute video program at home. I'm like, oh, that I can do.
Yeah.
So I woke up earlier and I made the time. Instead of having to go to the gym and come back and all that, I worked out and I showered and I got ready to go to work.
And you lost all the weight.
I lost 65 pounds in 9 months.
Awesome.
But what also happened, thank you, because of this, I started to read better things. I started to eat better things. I started to watch better things.
You were more intentional.
Exactly. The endorphins started happening and I was feeling happy. And I was even doing things, and I'm ADHD. I was meditating. Not an easy thing for a guy with
That's
ADHD.
amazing. That is amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
So now, do you coach men and women?
I do coach men and women.
It doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter. I don't do too much of the divorce recovery coach because one day when I was meditating, it was only a 10-minute guided meditation, and many of the times I was like, "When is this going to be over?" That's the ADHD in me. I don't get it. I had this download of information one time, and when I finished, I wrote out for 2 hours. What I saw is I'm loving my life, and I want to show other people how to do that. And that's where the acronym LIFE, live incredibly full every day, came from. Now with this new zest for life and this new mindset, I switched from being self-conscious to self-aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a big difference.
And that applies to anyone, divorced or not.
Right. So there's a big difference between self-conscious and self-aware. As a matter of fact, what I did recently was I just came out with a card deck of my coaching course.
Warrior to warrior.
Right. So go from being a warrior, somebody who's worried all the time, to a warrior, strong. And one of the cards talks about self-aware versus self-conscious. So just I'll read just a little bit of it. Self-conscious comes from a place of negative energy, guilt, conflict, doubt. Self-conscious is more outward directed. It's being more concerned about what others are thinking of you and how the situation is going to affect you. You probably react to uncomfortable situations instead of respond. Self-awareness comes from a place of positive energy, acceptance, contentment, and self-assuredness. Self-awareness is more inward-facing. You have an accurate, realistic understanding of how you're responding to situations and how you feel about them. So I made that switch. And it didn't happen overnight, but now that I understood what it was doing to me to be self-conscious, I made better decisions in my life.
Very good.
Yeah. And one of them was I started dating.
Oh, wow. Because, you would, because your confidence is back.
Right.
You're feeling the best you felt in years.
And I like myself. And I was loving myself, whereas before I didn't.
Yeah. So you would only attract people that love you as well.
Right. And I started dating. And what happened was I would go on these dates and I was kind of interviewing the women as to what their values were, because I understood how important values were now that I went through coaching.
Yeah.
And, many times, okay, this one, the values aren't there, the chemistry's not there, whatever. And one day I went out on a date with a woman and she's checking off every box. The values are all in sync and the chemistry's there and everything's right. About a month into it, I turned to her, I said, listen, I have to tell you something. And I don't need to hear it from you, but I want to say it to you. I'm falling in love with you because I love who you are. And I love that you see me as I am and you're not looking to change me. Well, 2 years later, we got married and we're married for almost 5 years.
Oh, now. Yeah. I love that. I love to celebrate. That's awesome. That's awesome. Congratulations. Well done.
I'm in a very happy place.
I can tell you're full of smiles.
Yeah.
So if there's any one thing you would say to, because I know that no one really wants to I don't think anyone gets married with the sole purpose of getting divorced.
No.
It just happens. Right. And initially, I don't think anyone feels good about it, irrespective of whether you're the one that initiated it.
Right,
so
exactly.
Your emotions are running back and forth.
Like a roller coaster.
Yeah. For some people, it's self-confidence. For some people, it's anger. For some people, it's resentment. But there's always just that not good feeling initially before you get to a point where you've let go and all that. Yes. What would be your advice in a few sentences to people who have just divorced and who are trying to find themselves again, rediscover themselves?
Right. So I would say first thing is take some time to heal. Okay. To heal yourself. Don't jump in to start saying, now that I'm divorced or get broken up, let me go jump into relationships. Because if you do, you'll end up finding somebody who's exactly like the last person in a different body.
Exactly.
So you need to heal, and you need to do some self-introspection. What works? What doesn't work? And be honest with yourself and admit to yourself that I have some things that are not working.
Yeah.
And then say, how am I going to get through this? Well, let me look for people around me who can support me. It could be a coach. It's best to be a coach, because a coach is someone who comes in with no agenda, right? With no, with you don't look at them. When it comes to your family, even if they're not judging you, you feel like they're judging you.
Yes.
And so a coach comes in, objectivity, no subjectivity. They're here to support you. And more importantly, you set up goals with them. They're here to be your accountability partner to help you get through the process.
Awesome.
So use those things as the way. There was one woman when I was coaching who I said, you're not allowed to date until you get my permission.
And what did she say?
She said, okay. And it took her 6-8 months before I finally gave her the permission, because
she needed to heal.
Yeah. And a lot of it had to do with, I have this thing I do in my core, in my coaching. It's called an energy leadership index, which is really the way my school gave it to me, and I use it in my practice. It's an assessment of how you show up every day, right? And it shows you 7 levels of energy, and the lowest one is victim, and the next one is conflict within yourself, with others. And her victim line was off the charts, and her conflict was very little. Was very little. So I said to her, have you been verbally abused in your life? She said, yes. And I was physically abused as well.
Oh, wow.
Because she never fought back. So the conflict line was very low. Well, that's why I said to her, you need to first have some self-love, self-worth, self-respect even, before you could go out, because you'll end up, and she was married twice already.
Otherwise, they'll mess you up again a third time.
Third time, exactly.
Wow. Wow, Martin, it's been so good talking to you this afternoon. What time is it there?
It's almost 10 a.m. New York time.
Okay, and it's almost 4 p.m. Nigerian time.
Wow.
Thank you, Martin, for getting on my podcast. Thank you very much. And keep doing what you do to make yourself happy, and keep up with that good smile.
Thank you so much.
I'm out.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Thrive with Omu Podcast. This is your host, Omu Obilo.